Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I did some videos yesterday discussing calories in, calories out, and I mentioned someone who I'd never heard of before yesterday named John Venus, based upon one of his video titles and what people were telling me about it. I threw him in casually into the thing, and a bunch of his fans came in freaking out, hating, saying I owe him an apology, that I don't know what's going on, so I actually watched his video. Let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing and work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. What do I always tell you guys when it comes to other YouTubers? What is it I tell you guys? If you ask me questions about them, don't expect me to give you a full analysis of them. Why? I'm busy with other stuff. I make over an hour of videos a day, a lot of days between my multiple channels, because I run 2 different channels. I don't really sit around watching a lot of YouTube. Unless you guys link me something with a specific question, I probably have never even heard of the channel you're talking about. All the fitness YouTubers that I discuss is because someone linked me the channel. And I've told you guys before, if you want an honest assessment, a full assessment of this person, what they practice and what they teach, that I'm not going to give it to you because I don't have time to watch another YouTuber that long. I'm busy making my own stuff. So that you're not going to get an honest assessment. The assessment I give you is not going to be fair. It's not going to be a total sum of their work, and I've told you guys this before, so if you ask, don't expect it. That you're just not going to get a fair assessment, because I'm not going to watch everything that they have. That you're going to get something based upon your specific question or your specific point. And someone came to me saying, hey, can someone lose weight eating 10,000 calories a day? That's what this vegan's claiming. Now, I did get it wrong. I absolutely got it wrong. That's not what he's promoting. However, what I will point out, he also trolled people the way he did this to specifically do clickbait, which, hey, you know what? I can respect that, guys. I'm a YouTuber. I'm trying to get my own outreach and everything, so I can appreciate that as a business strategy. But it's also going to be reasonable that when you put a video saying you lost weight on 10,000 calories and you're a vegan, everyone's going to assume before they see who you are that you're a durian rider. That's the impression you give. You know, that's the impression you're going to give. And because it's going to be based upon a given stereotype, and he knows that stereotype exists, and he used that to probably get some outreach just so that people would see it for the clickbait title and jumped on it. So, I mean, anyone who interpreted it that way, that's going to be reasonable. He did that on purpose. So, no one owes him an apology for that. He did it on purpose, trying to convince people to watch his stuff based upon what he said. Now, what he did actually say was pretty interesting, and it matches a lot of what I tell you guys all the time. I've told you guys this a lot. The de novo lipogenesis, which he covered in there, humans do not do this very often. It's not normal for human beings to store carbohydrates as body fat. We actually don't do that. Cows, mice, rats, a lot of animals that we study in labs have de novo lipogenesis happen in their systems at up to 100 times the rate that humans do. So if you look at just animal studies, it can give some misleading information, but human beings under normal conditions, it's very hard for us to convert more than about 5 to 10 calories in a single day to body fat from carbohydrates. All right, we do it at such a low rate that it's insignificant to your weight gain. Now, what John Venus actually did is what, again, I've talked to you guys about before on certain types of recomposition diets. This is very well documented in the scientific literature. All right, if you guys look at Lyle McDonald's UD 2.0, which I've discussed for you guys for a couple years now, and he's got good data in that book, links to various studies. He's got resources there that show you that when people are in a caloric deficit, which John did, John said his maintenance calories is around 3,000. He did 2,000 calories on one day, then 1,000 calories the next, right? So he's already created a deficit of 3,000 calories just on his normal activity. Then he did the 10,000 calorie, like all fruit challenge, which means nearly zero fat. So he's created a large deficit, and then he said he minimized it by doing a ton of cardio, burning over an extra 500 calories a day to minimize any chance of fat storage. So what is it that I've told you guys in the past, and he seems to be referring to a lot of the same data, that when you are in a caloric deficit, what happens from a single day of carb overfeeding? When we studied it in the lab and looked at it, people eat thousands of extra carbohydrate calories for only one day. How much of it gets stored as body fat? Anyone remember? About 1 or 2 grams of actual fat. So you're talking at most 10 to 20 calories. Less than 20 calories of that 10 to thousands of extra calories of carbs will be stored as body fat if you only do this for 1 to 2 days. 1 to 2 days, and that's been noted in the literature, because it takes a long time of carbohydrate overfeeding before de novo lipogenesis increases. Now, if you did this for a week straight, you would definitely start gaining body fat from the carbohydrates. But under normal situations, the body fat that you gain is coming from the fat that you eat. All right. Now, it is still based upon caloric intake. You don't just magically create or get rid of calories, but in the case of carb overfeeding, your body tends to store it as muscle glycogen. It will even supercompensate muscle glycogen in the short term, meaning if you consume a bunch of extra carbs for 1 day, your body will supercompensate glycogen if it's been depleted, which means it will temporarily store more glucose in the muscle cells and in the liver than they normally hold. And beyond that, what it will do, because again, it doesn't store carbohydrates as fat easily, it will start shuttling glucose into the mitochondria of your muscle cells, and it will burn it off as extra body temperature. And when I say burn it off, I'm talking hundreds, if not thousands of calories can be burned off sometimes in a day that way. However, it will only do this for a short period of time. And that's what's been noted. Beyond about 48 hours, if you keep overfeeding the carbs, you will start racking up body fat pretty quickly. You have to do it for a consistent amount of time. But if you keep dietary fat low, and that's what he did, he ate almost no dietary fat, your body will still only store the fat that you eat on that day or two, the day and the day after. So essentially what John Venus was showing people is how depleted glycogen combined with carbohydrate overfeeding in a very low fat environment doesn't actually cause any significant fat gain. Doesn't cause any significant fat gain. And what he actually did, he created an enormous deficit. He did a bunch of cardio with it, so he probably burned an enormous amount of body fat off in those 2 days. Then he carbohydrate overfed for 1 day, probably gained very, very little body fat from it. There is some fat in the fruit, but the amount of fat he probably gained in that day was somewhere in the range of 1 ounce at most. However, he had probably lost several ounces of body fat from the previous 2 days, and he regained a little bit of what he lost. 2 days afterwards, because he went back to a small calorie deficit the next day, his scale weight was down slightly. That scale weight being down slightly was a result of that previous 2 days to the 10,000 calories. Now, I can appreciate the fact that John used a clickbait title to teach people how this works with de novo lipogenesis and carb overfeeding and deficits, and his math was on point. I looked at everything he said in the video. I can appreciate that he's bringing that science in, because you don't see that a lot. I'm going to just be honest here. Most of the vegan channels I've seen in the past promote nothing but stupid bullshit. Like calories don't matter, you can eat unlimited carbs and lose body fat, and all this crazy shit that is scientifically unprovable. And apparently people were telling me, no, you need to go see what he's saying and don't just assume he's one of those people, because that's what it looked like when he's saying that in the title. It's very easy to just say, okay, well, fuck this guy, he's one of these jackasses, and lump him into that group, when the reality is he was using that as a clickbait to get people to look and then explain the actual truth to them. And they're saying, look, he calls Durian Ryder out on that bullshit. So, okay, that's fair enough, and I can appreciate that. And I'm glad that people brought to my attention that he actually isn't one of those, because that's the exact impression a lot of people are going to get at a surface glance. You know, and that's the unfortunate nature of YouTube. Not everyone has time to watch everything that a person's about. And, you know, that happens with me too. And I accept it and live with it. You know, people are like, well, you bitch about that. Well, not really. I know that's how it is. If people's first impression of me is one of my videos discussing some drama in the community like Rich Piana or Mike Rashid stuff, they're going to assume that's what my channel's all about. They're not going to understand that my channel talks a lot more about deadlifting, periodization, strength training. That's actually most of what my channel is about. Pursuing overall fitness as a primary goal. Fitness and athleticism and strength is the goal of your training. That's a lot of what I discuss. That's really what my channel is about. And I occasionally spend about 5% of my time discussing stuff in the community. People who consider drama, criticism, whatever. That's about 5% of my content. Probably 80% of my content is geared specifically towards strength training. That's probably 80% of my content. But, you know, if someone only glances at the surface, they're not going to know that. And, you know, as a YouTuber, you have to accept that. But the reality is, yeah, John basically did make a clickbait that made me and probably a lot of other people think that he's just like Durian Ryder or Freelia and all these other people who actually tell you that you can eat unlimited calories on a vegan diet. Which again, we all know is bullshit, and I am glad to know that he isn't in that camp and that he knows it's bullshit also. So I can appreciate that, and I can appreciate that a bigger channel like that is actually discussing the fact that de novo lipogenesis is actually very limited in human beings, and you actually have to work pretty hard as a human to make your body start storing carbohydrates as body fat, and that it isn't an energy efficient process. But by that same token, people need to remember that's an interesting truth, but you still don't escape calories in and calories out, because if you eat a diet with no fat in it, which eating fat and then overeating carbohydrates will cause you to store the fat, but you can't live on a zero fat diet. It will kill you. You will die. You will develop dietary deficiencies, hormonal deficiencies, and you will eventually die on a nearly zero fat diet. You can't survive on it. And you certainly can't be healthy on it. So while it's interesting to note that, people do need to realize if you're overeating calories consistently, irrespective of the composition of those calories in terms of fat, carbs, and protein, you're going to gain body fat. There's simply no way around that. That is just the real world that we live in. You can do things to mitigate that. The composition does matter as far as the amount of fat you gain on a given amount of calories, but it won't stop all fat gain. And he kind of showed that with his experiment. Because he did gain a small amount of fat from the overfeeding. It was just less than he had lost in the previous days due to a little bit of nutrient partitioning and metabolic trickery that occurs with depleted glycogen and then carbohydrate overfeeding in the short term. But it is a bit of metabolic trickery that has been noted in the scientific literature. It's not like this isn't understood, the process by which it works. Scientists have studied that, and it's an interesting bit of metabolic trickery that doesn't break calories in, calories out, but it certainly rides the edge of the rules because it does pull some bizarre things in the body that are interesting. And at least he educated some people on that, and that is something, that exact phenomenon he's talking about is something I've discussed at least 4 or 5 times in videos over the years. And it's interesting to see someone else out there in the community actually talk about it. So this was actually a surprising thing for me to actually sit down and watch the guy's video in its entirety. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.